Hey everyone, so you know how sometimes you pick up a book and it just hits you, not because it's a crazy thriller or a deep philosophical tone, but because it feels intensely human? Well, that's exactly how I felt about Louise Penny's Spider-Man. Now, if you're a fan of Chief Inspector Gummick, you already know you're in for a treat. But even if you've never met him before, this book, set against the beautiful yet sometimes brutal backdrop of Quebec in early spring, is a masterclass in weaving together intense personal drama with a high-stakes crime. The story really kicks off with two major shitstorms is probably the best word for it. On one hand, you have a massive record-breaking flood threatening to engulf entire villages, including our beloved Three Pines, and on the other, Chief Inspector Orman Comic, a man who's reached the pinnacle of power as chief superintendent, is back at the Surrey after a 9-month suspension, facing a demotion and public scorn. People are actually tweeting Gummick sucks, can you believe it? The tension in that Surrey conference room on his first day back? You could practically cut it with a knife, but that's just the tip of the iceberg, because at the heart of this story is a truly tragic mystery, the disappearance and murder of Vivian Godin, a young pregnant woman, and let me tell you, the journey to finding out what happened to her is complicated. When Gomit and his team, particularly the new recruit Lizette Cloutier and the surprisingly gentle giant Bob Cameron, start digging, the initial suspect is pretty obvious: Vivian Death's abusive husband, Carl Tracy. This guy is frankly a total piece of work. He lives in squalor, admits to hitting his wife, and shows zero concern for her disappearance. You'd think it's an open and shut case, right? But with Gummick, these are never that simple. So as they're investigating, what's one of the first big pieces of evidence they find? Vivian's duffel bag, complete with some very strange contents, like summer clothes in freezing April and abortion pills. This bag becomes super important, but here's the kicker: to find it on Carl Tracy's private land during an emergency flood diversion without a proper search warrant. And this brings us to a huge fascinating legal concept in the book, the poisonous tree doctrine. Have you ever heard of that? Basically, if evidence is obtained illegally, it's tainted and can't be used in court, like a poisonous fruit from a poisonous tree. So, despite having a strong gut-level feeling that Tracy is their guy, the judge rules that because the duffel bag and everything discovered from it, including the location of Vivian's body, was found without permission, it's all inadmissible. Can you imagine the frustration? It's enough to make you scream. This leads me to a question I was asking myself while reading: how much do our assumptions or even our prejudices impact the truth? Because everyone from Gommick himself to Vivian's screaming father, Homer, assumes Carl Tracy is the killer, and honestly, with good reason. But when the legal system fails and Tracy walks free, it forces Gummick and his team to look deeper, and that's where things get really interesting. Gummick, with his uncanny ability to see beyond the obvious, starts wondering what if Carl Tracy was actually telling the truth. What if he didn't murder Vivian? This idea, which seems insane at first, forces the team to re-examine everything. They start digging into the nuances, the things that didn't quite fit, like why Vivian didn't take her dog Fred with her if she was planning to leave, or why she was calling a seemingly wrong number repeatedly on the day she died. This is where the book really shines, exploring the subtle demonisms of life and thought. As Gommick quotes from Moby Dick: all that most maddens and torments, all that stirs up the least of things, all truth but malice in it. This quote becomes a key idea, suggesting that sometimes the truth we see is colored by our own biases and assumptions, perhaps even malice. We see this played out not just in the murder investigation, but also with Clara Morrow, the artist. Her new art is getting savaged by critics and on social media, with people calling her a poser and just plain shit. She's devastated, wondering if it's true, but her friend Werner reminds her that while it might be all truth with malice in it, the malice doesn't make it right. It's a powerful parallel to Gommick's whole struggle with the public perception of him, particularly after a doctored video surfaces, making him look like he's a murderer of children. The book brilliantly shows how easily perception can become reality, especially online. Now, as the investigation twists and turns, they discover some truly shocking things. Vivian wasn't running away from her husband, she was running to a confrontation with her father, Homer. And why? Because it turns out Homer had been physically abusing her for years. Just as Carl Tracy had, Vivian had demanded money from Homer as restitution, threatening to expose him if he didn't pay. It's a gut punch of a revelation. The victim was caught in a cycle of abuse, and her beloved father was the source of her deepest pain. So when they reevaluate the evidence, the pieces finally click into place. Vivian was on that bridge to confront Homer, not a lover. In a desperate emotional exchange, she likely spoke her truth, and Homer, perhaps in a moment of rage or panic, pushed her. It was an accident, a terrible one, but an accident nonetheless. The raw emotion, the desperation of the situation, it just escalated. This means that Homer, a man we've come to sympathize with, almost commit murder himself, and who has been living with intense grief and guilt, is actually the one responsible for Vivian's death. This is a massive twist, showing how deeply flawed and complex people can be, and how easy it is to misinterpret actions based on our initial assumptions. The ending is a powerful reflection on justice, forgiveness, and moving forward. While Carl Tracy is technically innocent of murder, he is still a terrible man, and Homer, while responsible, is a man consumed by grief and deep regret. Gomek's unwavering belief in the human capacity for change and his relentless pursuit of the true truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is what ultimately defines him as a better man. What does this book tell us about our own lives? Well, first, it's a stark reminder of the power of social media to distort truth and shape perceptions. We need to be critical consumers of information and remember that things are rarely as simple as they seem on a screen. Second, it challenges us to look beyond the obvious, to question our assumptions, and to recognize that even the good people can harbor darkness, and the bad ones might have hidden depths. It asks us, is it true? Is it kind? Does it need to be said, not just in our words, but in our thoughts and actions too? This book is a journey into the messy, complicated, often heartbreaking, but ultimately hopeful core of humanity. It teaches us about the enduring power of community, the courage it takes to face uncomfortable truths, and the constant effort required to be a better man or a better woman. So, if you're looking for a crime novel that's more than just a whodunit, that will make you think deeply about human nature, forgiveness, and the meaning of justice, then definitely pick up Louise Penny's A Better Man. I promise, it will stay with you long after you turn the last page.